Welcome to the Minute to Midnight show with Chris.
And Tony.
Hey Tony, what a week it's been.
Yep, sure has, Chris. Lots been going on.
Yeah, we've had a couple of big issues in the States come through in the past week or so. A couple of things that are on the horizon. Well, they've been passed through legislation that can cause some uproar, some unsteadiness on the boat in the future.
Yes, Chris. There's been a number of things that have happened in the past week that concern me. Bills passed and things in America. One of the ones that concerns me big time is the TPPA, the fast tracking of that. Oh, they call it Obama trade. But I believe that's going to have significant ramifications for all of us in New Zealand and around the world if that bill gets passed. I'm hoping we can avoid it here, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, why do you think that, Tony?
Because, Chris, I don't believe it is just a free trade agreement. They're hiding behind the words free trade agreement because that sounds like a good thing, like it's something that people would want. But actually what it really is a move by large global corporations to take control of the world and the New World Order. It will give them the ability to usurp the sovereignty of individual nations.
Yeah, I was reading a little bit about it in the States in particular, that to be able to read the TPPA legislation, you had to sign an affidavit, really, to have a look at it, and you had to abide by a lot of secrecy. So no one really knew what was in it.
No, well, this is the whole thing. There's so much secrecy around it, but we know from what has been in WikiLeaks and various other places that it's a lot more than just a trade agreement, and I do not like at all what I've seen that's in it.
Right. Well, to other things around the world, in the economic side of things, we've seen Greece is in the middle of a bank holiday.
Yes, it's not the kind of holiday you want, is it?
No.
Not going to the beach, not without money.
Certainly summertime over there, but not a good summer holiday, that one.
No, not at all.
No. So Greece is the word. And that's certainly the lyrics of that famous song that was sung by Olivia Newton-John. But hey, Greece is the word at the moment, and that's going to be interesting to see what comes out of that in the next week or so.
Yes, and also the Chinese stock market, a bit of movement downwards there.
Yes, there's been some froth in the markets. As we already know, I mean, in the American markets, the Dow Jones and the NASDAQ, they've had a bit of a relief last week or so. And China, that had a big hit. I think it was last Friday, about 5% of the market. And but that recovered this week to a certain degree. And we're certainly seeing silver and gold whacked again this week.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? It's kind of really counterintuitive, you would think, but there's reasons for it. There's reasons for the whole thing being manipulated, eh?
Well, perhaps we should talk a little bit about that today.
Yes, we should.
From our first broadcast, we spoke a little bit about silver and gold, and I think it is a good time to sort of say why in particular silver anyway. For one, silver's a lot cheaper than gold, and for a lot of our listeners, it would be an easier way to attain than gold.
I agree. And as an avid studier of these things, Chris, I believe you found something you would like to read out.
I just want to take an excerpt out of Bill Holter's article on JS Mindset in the last few days. And I quote, "There have been stories JPM has amassed 350 million or more ounces of silver. We also know China, Russia, India have been huge buyers of gold. We now know JP Morgan has increased their derivatives by over $3 trillion in just one quarter. It is obvious to me they are the ones sitting on the paper prices of gold and silver. This would make sense for the Fed to attack the metals and thus support the dollar." So what we're seeing here is JP Morgan and the Fed are in collusion with this. In fact, standard procedure in any war is to strengthen your currency while weakening your opponents. I believe the neocons know the bottom of our gold barrel is close at hand. They have decided to go all in on price suppression, knowing full well contracts were made to be broken. and then in brackets, defaulted on.
Interesting for sure. And the movement in silver is likely to be higher and bigger percentage-wise than gold when it comes to it. We're moving towards a cashless society eventually. It's important that we realise that even though we're moving in that direction, and eventually we'll end up probably with a digital currency, something other than cash, that it is going to be backed by something. They're not just going to come out and say, oh, you, Chris, you can have 100 of these, and Lord Rothschild and Mr. Rockefeller, they're also going to have 100 of the same thing. No, they're not going to work it like that. So they're going to have some way that they come up with for the new currency when it is brought in, whenever that is. And I believe silver and gold will play a big role in it.
Yeah. Let's get on to the fundamentals then. Let's just give the listeners a bit of an idea on how the whole system works, why they value silver and gold the way it's valued. So should we go down that track, Tony?
Okay, sounds good, Chris. Yep, why not?
Well, let's take the silver and gold market at the moment. The market's round about $15.50 for silver at the moment, and gold's been punched down to about $1,160 in the last couple of years. It got up to $1,900 an ounce at one point. It's been brought back all the way to $1,160 odd presently. In the last 10 years, 2002 onwards, we've seen a remarkable increase in the gold market. Back in the early 2000s, it was about $350 an ounce. So it has come a long way. It's been up and it's come down. It's retracted a bit. But this is just how markets work. There's been some talk out there that's a bit of manipulation in the markets, and that could well be true. As Tony's already alluded to, he's mentioned some manipulation, and that could well be taking place, in particular with the big banks. Now, the reasons being for that, probably we could just be a bit speculative as to why this is happening. One reason could be because of they want to knock the price down so they can accumulate physical supply. The other reason could be that they want to knock it down because they want to they want to knock down the price of the equities market. What I mean by that is all the shares in mining companies, for example, so that they can buy as many of those up as possible.
Yes, well, that kind of is a good point, Chris, and it goes back to what I was saying before a bit, where I believe that when they do come up with our new cash system, it won't be cash, new monetary system, when the whole other system crashes, and I believe they're going to crash it deliberately. I'm talking about the elite, the Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, the New World Order. They will create the chaos to bring in the new system. But when they do, they're going to want to be the ones that have still the control over it. So how are they going to do that? They're going to do that by having the gold and silver and other commodities cornered, I believe, so that when they come up with a new system, the elite will have more. So they'll have a reason to be able to go, right, you're doled out a certain amount, Mr. Chris, but we're going to have X amount way more, and they'll base it on something. And I think it could well be based on physical commodities like gold and silver. So they're accumulating it now, and central banks are accumulating it now, so that when the system is crashed and a new one comes in, those people will still have the most, so they can start again. Because they're not going to be starting again based on the current fiat currencies, which will be hyperinflating and going to zero or whatever happens. So they're going to base it on something else that's foundational. That's what I believe.
Yeah, right. There is another factor here that I haven't taken consideration too as to why they're knocking the price back, and that is to flush physical out of the market as well. So people get scared when the price gets knocked down. So those that do own it, that they're getting flushed out of the system, and that they're selling off whatever inventory they've got.
Except for those of us that are in the know and realise there's a great big game plan going on here. But the average Joe blogs, they have got no clue.
Yeah, and then of course we've got this market that's manipulated, or presumably by a virtual market, in that most of this is not backed by anything.
Well, Chris, I'd just like to go back and actually and read a couple of things. like I hear Christians, particularly a lot of them saying, "Oh no, the Bible says, what's that scripture, Ezekiel 7:19, Chris, about throwing their gold and silver into the streets in the day of the Lord and things like that." But I believe that it's quite clear in Daniel chapter 11 that under the Antichrist beast system, that precious metals are going to still have great value. And I'll read you that from Daniel chapter 11:38 says, "But in their place he shall honour a god of fortresses and a god which his fathers did not know, and he shall honour with gold, silver, and precious stones and pleasant things." And then further down, it mentions that in verse 43, he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver. So basically, that tells me straight off the bat that people are wrong when they think that it's going to be gold or silver will be a doorstop or something under that system. And who knows, it may be some time away before the Antichrist actually takes control. But in the meantime, I believe we need to be prepared to survive the coming financial crisis.
Yeah, exactly. But coming back to that first passage that you looked at, Ezekiel 7:19, that's a classic one where they do come back at you, as you say, and say, what's the use of gold and silver being thrown out in the streets? But you've got to have a look at that scripture quite clearly, and it says, I think we've got to have a look at the word "there" that is used in that passage, and "there" meaning it could well mean something different. When it says "their silver and gold," or "their silver and their gold," to me it's like there is another meaning here. It's a different type of gold. I believe that gold and that silver that they're talking about is the virtual silver and gold that we're living under today, that manipulates the markets into the price structure that it is.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, Chris, because if you go back to Joel chapter 3, which is definitely a chapter talking about the end times, it says in verse 5, "Because you have taken my," and it's got a capital M, "because you have taken my silver and gold and carried into your temples my prized possessions." See, so God is actually calling it his gold and silver, which is different than the verse you're talking about where it says their gold and silver.
Yeah, and it comes back to what is currency. If you have a look at it historically, gold and silver have been currency since creation.
Well, that's right. It's real money, isn't it? Over 600 fiat currencies have come and gone in the last several thousand years, and not one of them survives. But gold and silver have carried on and survived through all of those times.
Yeah, and it's surprisingly, well, it's interesting actually how gold and silver to that extent are accountability behind any finance.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, gold and silver, and nothing is going to save people on the day of the Lord except for knowledge of Jesus Christ, really, when it comes down to it. But we're not living in the day of the Lord yet. What I mean when I say the day of the Lord, well, there's numerous prophecies in both the Old and New Testaments that refer to the day of the Lord as being a time when God's going to pour out his judgment on the earth at the end of the Great Tribulation. At that time, judgment will be poured out on the wicked of the earth, but it'll also be a time for redemption and blessing for the lovers of the truth and those that love God. So it's a future event, but to be honest, it might not be that far in the future looking at what's going on now. Because in the meantime, we've got to live, we've got to survive, we've got to figure our way through the great big economic crash that we believe is coming. So it's where we've got to be open to God's guidance and make decisions on that as to how as individuals we best get through it. And what you're saying is you believe that gold and silver are going to play a big role in that. Is that right, Chris?
I do. In the financial crisis that's upon us or that's imminent, definitely I believe that gold and silver will play a big part. And if you haven't got any, then you're gonna struggle. Let's have a look at Greece again. I mean, I believe what we're going to be coming into, we need to have a look at Greece to see what could possibly eventuate here in New Zealand and, in the Western world and here in New Zealand. We're seeing long lines of people outside ATM machines. What's that telling you?
Well, it's telling you they're not able to get money out of the bank, and they're only, in fact, I see in Greece they were only able to withdraw $60 or €60 or whatever it was at any given time.
Yeah, it was originally double that, €120, and then they cut it down to 60. So is that what's in store for us in the coming financial environment?
Yeah, well, I believe so, which is why we're not going to be wanting to be queuing up for ATMs machines, are we?
No, no. So there's a good clue as to what we should be doing. I think the other thing we should do, yeah, get some silver if you can. Otherwise, also, I should say, get some cash and put it somewhere safe so that when this inevitable day happens, at least you've got something to fall on.
And of course, the other thing is to make sure you've got supplies to live for a little while, because you don't want to be at the supermarket when every Tom, Dick, and Harry is rushing near and the shelves are emptying within 2 hours, do you? So having some supplies of food and general things that you need to survive is going to be crucially important, particularly in that first period of time, I believe. But we'll look a bit more in another show on survival supplies, I think. So today we'll just talk a little bit more about the gold and silver and what we do there. So you got some more clues for us here, Chris?
Well, I think I'll just give you some fundamentals behind silver in particular. I prefer silver myself, once again, and I think for the majority of our listeners, silver is probably a better one to get hold of, affordability wise. So silver's got a lot going for it. As Tony mentioned earlier, that silver's probably got a lot more percentage-wise move in it than what gold has when this happens, and the reasons behind that are many. One is silver is an industrial metal as well. We use it in every electrical appliance. The solar industry uses it extensively.
Yep, and silver's also the best conductor of electricity that we know of.
And that's why it's in every electrical appliance.
Exactly.
Now, every year there's about 2014 figures, there was 870 million ounces mined of silver, yet there was 1.13 million ounces that were recovered through recycling. So it's a recyclable metal, but it's also a metal that is thrown out a lot too, because a lot of our appliances are thrown into landfills, and once silver's gone into the landfill, that's it, you don't see it again. Whereas gold, the majority of gold that's ever been mined is in history is still above ground, it's still in existence today. It's not been thrown away so much as silver has. So that there's some fundamentals there behind silver, that it's used also in the medical fraternity at the moment. There's a lot of medical uses for silver. We have even colloidal silver, which used to be used, incidentally, before penicillin was around. And then there's the investment side of the metals as well. So silver is in bullion. You've got bullion coins. You've got bullion bars. When you come down to investment in commodities, in particular precious metals, there's only 0.9% of all investments are invested in the metals. So from that, you can see that there's a lot of uses for the metals, but investment-wise, there's not a lot of people out there investing in it. So when this all falls apart and there's a silver and gold-backed monetary system that comes in the imminent future, then we're going to see it's going to be like an elastic band being pulled back as a Shanghai, and it's just going to let loose, and gold and silver are going to go to the moon.
Okay, Chris, you just mentioned Shanghai. Well, that interests me because we know that China and Shanghai is accumulating gold like crazy, and it seems that they know this is coming in, that they're positioning themselves for a gold-backed yuan in the pretty near future, perhaps, it would seem to me.
They still do own a lot of the US currency, mind you. But as we've seen in the last week, we've seen the equities market come off the boil? Could that lead to a imminent crash throughout China?
Well, it's hard to know. I mean, as you mentioned in our previous broadcast, there are so many ducks that are lined up. We don't really know exactly which one it's going to be that starts the collapse.
That's right. That's right.
With all the fundamentals that we know, where do you think that silver's going to go and gold? Where are they going?
Great question, Tony. If you ever look at the historics of silver and the gold ratio, historically the gold and silver ratio has been between 1 in 10 and 1 in 15. So currently we're about 1 in 60, 1 in 65. So there's a lot of room there for growth in itself. So on that, say if it was 1/10 the price of gold, then theoretically today silver should be $160 odd an ounce.
Yeah, well, I've actually seen people say that in the end, silver may end up even closer towards gold, simply because of all the uses that silver has and the fact that there's actually a lot less of it.
Yeah, but yet there's more uses. So it's a metal that is, you can't replace it with anything else.
No, this is right. Yep.
So that's where the fundamentals and all this are looking forward. The fundamentals here, silver's going to go skyrocket. It's got to.
Well, what do you think about mining then?
Mining, all the mining companies, they're going to just go up even further. So that comes down to your investment strategy, and we're not here to talk about that today, but yeah, the mining companies, I believe they're going to just go out of this world.
Well, I thought it was significant when I read a year or two back that Rothschilds had taken a management role in Spanish Mountain Gold.
Well, exactly. They know more than you and I. They know what's up ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, the silver price, that's why I believe that the listeners should be preparing themselves with, in particular, silver. If you can get physical silver, get it, and get it now.
Yeah, time's running out. I mean, somewhere soon that this game is going to end, and it will be impossible for love or money to get it, I believe, because when the paper market begins to crash and people start wanting to collect on what they think they have, they're going to find that there is nowhere near as much of it to go around as what they believe, that they'll find they don't own it if they've only got it in a paper form. So, okay, so we cover that. We need to be covered with physical silver and gold. I mean, some people are going to go, oh no, well, we can't afford to do that at all. So to those people, it's really important that you get all the other things sorted out. The food, the supplies, your medical things, enough to survive the crash for a while when this event occurs. Don't you agree there, Chris?
Oh, definitely. And there's a lot of practical things out there that you can be doing. And, we haven't got time to go over it today, perhaps for another session. But yeah, there's a lot of tips that we've learned that we can pass on to you. But once again, we'll leave that for another episode. So from me, Chris.
And from Tony.
Have a great day.